Welcome to Pitchslap.
Hello, my name is Marcus Cauchi. I'm a pioneering sales coach who's been inspiring salespeople to rise above the constraints of their management culture. 30 years plus in the industry has taught me that essentially bant is bollocks. We've got to stop wasting the customer's time asking them selfish, self-serving questions. We've got to get away from the tyranny of the playbook, and we've got to get away from the idea that the customer somehow needs to be controlled. And I'm here for the Pitch Slap today to bring to you some fresh ideas in terms of what you can do to perform better in this changing economy.
Hey, Marcus. Seems like we talk a lot, but we never talk enough. Let me rephrase that. We never converse with each other enough. We both do plenty of talking. I'll say that.
Guilty.
So, yeah, welcome. Thanks for being one of our inaugural Run Your Guest number 3. We're recording on Monday, June 19th. It's nice and early here, and it's late afternoon for you.
Yeah, quarter to 3. So, yeah, it's good.
All right. So, yeah, not only are you this pioneering coach, you're also the host of the Inquisitor podcast, and we'll get to that pitch at the end of the show. But yeah, who are you? What's your story? How'd you get where you got to?
My story. I've been in sales for 35, nearly 40 years. My first sales job was a part-time job when I was in my second year at university. And I got a job selling tap attachments at an NSA MLM networking event. So it was selling pipes and things like that. And I got a real buzz for it because someone came in and they were buying 50 pence worth of blue tubing. And I asked them a few questions. Anyway, they left with £136 in product. And I seemed to have a bit of a knack for asking questions. And that was really my first taste of it. I'd been playing around, running my own little holiday business ventures for pocket money and things, but never really anything like this. And what I loved about the whole process was that it was an opportunity to solve problems. And I got really excited by that because I'm quite good at joining the dots. And I did 10 years in recruitment. I don't know how many years in software. And throughout all of that time, what I've realized is that ultimately it's down to how well you understand people and how well you can read the effect you are having on others. And if you don't understand that, then no amount of technique is going to make any difference.
Okay, maybe we should just drop right into consultative selling. Is that what your ethos is here? What's the mindset?
It's principled selling. I look at selling a bit like golf. And for those of you who are cringing in your seats at the thought of this, the purpose of when you're playing golf is to go around in as few shots as possible. It's a game that you play against yourself. And sales is almost identical. We spend so much time and effort trying to fill the top of the funnel. And when we're down on our numbers, our instinctive reaction is to do more. Well, to my mind, that's just insanity. We should be asking better questions. So we should be looking at our systems and our processes and anything that has a regular failure rate north of 50%, that should be on the Amber Alert list. And that should be reviewed every 3 to 6 months. Because the question is there a better way? And inevitably, there is. Because if you fail 1 in 2, if you could just fail 1 in 3, you're already 50% better off. It's insane. So the law of small numbers. Then we have to start looking at those systems and those processes and those motions where we have 90 or 95 or 97 or 99% failure rates. but we consider a 3% conversion rate on a cold marketing campaign to be good practice. I don't. I consider that to be failing 97% of the time, interrupting busy people with your irritating noise. How dare you? There's no need for it. And we should be looking at these questions with a dispassionate eye. Just because you come from direct sales doesn't mean direct sales is the right way to go. In fact, in this market, I would suggest direct sales is the least effective way to go. You should be going through ecosystems and partners and JVs where people already have trusted relationships and they have hot introductions that they can make, instead of you working cold and working at 1/64th the effectiveness.
And I couldn't agree more. That's something in my current role, taking on, we're calling them special audiences, but they're verticals that people don't know how to work with, or they choose not to work with for various reasons. And nonprofits being the original, the key phrase that they're not poor. Everybody needs to get off that. Nonprofit or charity it's a misnomer. And what it comes down to is they are understaffed. It's the same reason I work with startups in the same fashion. They don't have time for your interruptions and your nonsense. And the key line that I've used with many people trying to figure out that space is that a good referral is worth 10,000 hours of research. And from what you're saying here, is that needs to be the commonplace.
Well, sell hot, not cold. When you look at the data, on average, cold opportunities will convert somewhere between 3 and 5% of the time. That's roughly 1 in 20, 1 in 21, 22. Referrals convert 1 in 6. This is based on the Referral Institute study from about 15 years ago, but it was 250,000 SMEs. And that number, we all know, referrals convert better. They're easier to get through to the people that you want to speak to. There's less resistance. Well, selling hot is slightly different. This is somebody who is an advocate of yours, who is hand delivering you to someone that they already know and trust. And they are putting their reputation on the line to introduce you because it's the right thing for the customer and it's the right thing for you. And they are not looking for reciprocation. They are simply doing it because it's the right connection to make. Now, when people make that kind of introduction and you as the vendor show up and you are timely, you're relevant, you're delivering real value, and you're both affordable and on plan, the odds are exceptionally high, and I'm talking 64 to 81% conversion, that you will end up with the business without having to go through a competitive tender, without any negotiation, and without them going to speak to any of your competition. And they will make the decision quickly and simply. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm inherently bone idle. I've taken doing bugger all to an art form. I'm very happy to put my feet up and do less. And that's my whole ethos. How do we do less but better on purpose and mean it? Why do we have to work so hard? I'm not into the burn and the grind. I'm intelligently lazy. I recruit people for being intelligently lazy. Minimum effort, minimum loss of life. And there's no need to diminish the service or the experience.
That I love a good referral. And I love it as someone in complete control. Is referral safe? Okay, let me back up. I think I answered my own question. I was going to ask if referrals are safe and safe to take if you don't think you can hold up your end of the deal after the deal closes.
God, no.
The answer there is don't work at a place or don't sell a product that you can't uphold your end of the promise.
But also, Peter, you have to know when you have to walk away. And if you cannot deliver, you have no place selling. If you can't deliver what you said you could, if you can't deliver when you said you could, if you can't deliver to the quality, the standard, or the expectation, you should not be selling it. You have an obligation to be completely transparent, completely honest. The problem with lying isn't that you can't be forgiven, it's it can't be forgotten. That's the danger. Mark Twain was right. Never lie. That way you don't have to remember anything.
Right.
And if you're just scrupulously honest all the time and you're transparent and you tell people about the deficiencies in your product and you recommend when they should be buying a competitor, you then become known as somebody who is known for keeping and having word that is worth keeping. You earn loyalty and trust. Because in sales, as in life, the only two currencies you have are trust and influence. And if you're willing to cheapen it by transacting in the short term for a short-term advantage, and you're willing to give away that priceless gift, I think you're an idiot. You deserve to suffer because what right have you got to go out there and manipulate, coerce, lie, omit, exaggerate in order to take a short-term win that is not in someone else's best interest? That makes you a horrible human being, and you have broken the Jimmy Carr rule, which I won't quote directly here, but it's paraphrased as, if you meet 3 nasty people by 12 o'clock, you're the nasty person. Don't be a nasty person. Okay? He's a little bit more vociferous, and it begins with C.
Charming.
Charming. 4 letters.
The
And it's not cute.
I think there's an expense as well in not delivering that your referrer, if your referee is upset, your referrer might go. And I'm starting to learn. So I've been in sales a long 20 years. I'll date myself. I've been in sales for 20 years. And I've learned that a positive referral is higher retention on both on all 3 sides.
The data on this is really clear, Peter. Instead of a 1 in 20, it's a 1 in 6 conversion. But the initial order value is 2.5 times larger than cold. The average order frequency is typically 3 times greater. And the referral rate is 4 times more frequent. Now, you do the multiplication on that. That isn't even selling hot. That's just referral. This isn't a referral partnership where you and I have intimate understanding of each other's businesses, strengths and weaknesses. We've spent time hearing about each other's war stories and case studies, and have sat down together and developed each other's CAPS process so that we're looking at being able to make a referral as if it's you making the referral for yourself in your language, but educating me to do that. So that I can make pinpoint accurate, perfect referrals. Now, those convert 1 in 6, but hot, I can convert 6 in 10, 8 in 10, 9 in 10, 9.5 in 10. Now, what that means is I have a very, very low prospecting tariff. You know, at the moment, in fact, pre-COVID, the numbers were 33 to 46 dial attempts to get 1 effective, 14 effectives to get 1 first meeting. And then 7 out of 8 first meetings don't result in a second. Well, I was speaking to Suzanne, my wife, earlier today, and she made an interesting observation. Why are there marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads and not just bloody qualified leads? Instead of this utterly pointless, onanistic, dysfunctional separation of the roles, when what it does is it distances us from the customer, causes us to create more friction as we chuck them over the fence to the next poor sucker in line, who's got a bunch of gates that they need to push the customer through to give audit the illusion of control. You don't have any customer control. The customer decides if they're going to buy. You can coerce them, you can bully them, you can bribe them, but you don't have control. They make that decision and they may resent it if you pressure them. Why would you do that?
I see a budding branch on the conversation there. I do want to lean into referrals a little bit more, because the whole premise of what we're doing is to try and coach people through not doing it wrong. And I'm standing here thinking about, where does referral become gauche? Where does it become ineffective? And you talked about a few different things. You talked about the best reciprocity is no reciprocity at all. However, every industry I've worked in, there's always a bird dog or a kickback or a thank you cash
Yeah, but
stipend for.
that's brokerage. That's not referral, Peter. That's being a broker. That's being a pimp. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with it if that is your business model. But I am not in the business of pimping people out for money. I'm in the business of making outstanding, exceptional referrals because it's right for the customer and it's right for the person I'm referring. I've been building an ecosystem for the last 18 months, 2 years. And I've got to be honest with you, um, the thing I value the most is my reputation, my word. I don't give a damn about the money. The money's easy. I just sell something. And the easiest way of doing that is shutting up and letting the customer tell me what their problem is. But instead, what most of us do is we vomit up features and functions that no one cares about in an attempt to try and reach a quota that only we and our CFO cares about. And at the end of the day, the customer has become a forgotten afterthought at the end of a long chain of abuse. And enough is enough. I'm calling time now. I think now is the time for a clarion call, for principled sellers, for people with a bit of spine and backbone who look at in disgust and contempt with the way that we have turned sales into this pastiche of everything that none of us really would want to be associated with. I mean, who wants to be the sleazy Jordan Belfort con man stuck in some boiler room ripping off old ladies? Who wants to be the one in Matilda's dad, putting sawdust in the gearbox? Well, is that who you want to be? Well, damn it, I don't. And I don't want to work with anybody who wants to be one of them. I want to work with people who are deadly serious about sales being the most noble thing that we can possibly do in business. Selling is about serving other people. Selling is about really understanding what they are trying to accomplish and creating the conditions for them to be able to do that, whether it involves us or not. That's why my network is more than just a damn referral system. It's a mechanism for me to be able to help people solve problems that are impossible for them. I solve impossible problems by breakfast time every day. Why? Because of my network, because of the people I can refer. My favorite question is, what's currently impossible for you that if it was possible would be a game changer? Well, more often than not, they tell me something that's probably I can do with 2 phone calls. Not because I'm brilliant, but because I know people who do this sort of stuff. And I'm really good at connecting the dots. I think that's what salespeople should be doing. We bring people together. Most of good selling is project management, cat herding, making sure the right people, having the right conversations with the right people in the right way at the right time, and choreographing all of that so they all meet at a certain point so the customer gets the outcome they intended. And then everyone can celebrate, everyone can get rewarded. But the way we compensate, the way we recruit, the way we measure, it's all geared to be selfishly self-orientated for a handful of investors and a few leaders. And everyone else pays the price. I say enough.
And you're looping back around to your distanced dysfunction argument. How can a salesperson step up as a choreographer? How do we end uh, the fight between salespeople and marketing, the blame game? Whose job is it to referee?
In all honesty, and this is going to be deeply unpopular in the sales arena, I think marketing should have sales report into marketing. Sorry, sales should report into marketing. But I think overall, everyone should report into customer success because we exist precisely because of, not in spite of, the customer. We exist to help them accomplish their desired outcomes. That's why they pay us money. They don't buy our product or our service. No one has ever bought training from me. They bought a better future, which they thought training may be a means to that end. They wanted to put their kids through school. They wanted to pay off the mortgage. They wanted to buy a second home. They wanted to retire early. I don't care what it is, but their reasons had nothing to do with my product. And any number of different service providers could just as easily have solved their problem. On a day-to-day basis, people like banks and investors solve similar problems that I do in terms of driving growth. And people like consultants and trainers and software companies help sales organizations sell more, better, faster, more effectively. So I compete with a wide range of different services, but people come to me for my specific set of skills. Why? Because I have something that resonates with them, human being to human being, and they can see themselves with certainty being able to implement it. Isn't that what being an ally is? It's helping the other side have a clear path to that better future and challenging them when they are talking shit. Tell them when they are about to do themselves harm. Tell them when you can find a way to help them get there better, faster, with less friction, more effectively. You have an obligation to do that as their ally. And I think that's the kind of robust, conflict-laden organization that I want to be part of. I want conflict, but I want constructive conflict. I want those intersectional moments with my customers, my partners, my competitors. I love the whole idea of working with my competition and not being worried about them, but seeing them as an asset. If I don't have competition in my space, I don't have as much awareness. I don't have people to refer to when I don't make the sale.
The brand is making the sale at that point.
Yeah. But if I can then say, the person you got to speak to is my pal Pete. He's a competitor of mine, and it really boils my piss to the idea that I'm going to have to pass the business over. But he is better suited to serve you than I am. Okay. And I'm going to withdraw now and hand you over to him. I mean, how powerful is that? What? But the only way you can do that is if you don't have a scarcity mentality, which the way we set things up, and you ask me what really bothers me, the waste. If I have to make 33 times 14 times 8 dials in order to get 1 second meeting, why not just ask the question, well, what do I have to do to get more second meetings? Well, don't do 686 dials and then multiply that by 8, which is about 3,500, in order to get to the one thing that I could just work out. What am I doing wrong in the first meeting that's causing them not to invite me back? Isn't that a more sensible question?
Yes. It sounds like there's a need for, so marketing, customer service, and sales all have a different customer story. I've worked with too many salespeople that once the deal's done, they're around for when it's renewal time, and they're there to forward an email if somebody complains.
They do drive-by shootings. They sell and run. Who the hell wants to be sold to by a drive-by shooter?
Well, yeah. Then you've got customer care. I mean, I keep falling back to the automotive industry. Customer care is always hilarious because the mechanics and the service writers, whenever you go into a place and you say, hey, should I buy this car? The answer 100% of the time is no, this car's junk. I see them all the time. I'm always repairing these cars. Well, no shit. That's your job. That's where you're at. But it beats on you and it drains you. And then you've got marketing, which is touting a feature that they don't understand, that product put out there, and they don't exactly understand why. And instead of marketing going, it will stick with cars. Instead of marketing going, you need to get to work on time with something reliable. They say 500 horsepower. I know maybe 6 people that should be driving a 500 horsepower car that actually have the ability to.
I don't know anyone who wouldn't end up dead.
Yeah. And that's not what they're looking for. You're not even solving a problem anymore. You're creating the normal they want. And that I'm really liking the jobs to be done format just because of that, because marketing's having to think through the problem and understand the customer. But we're so divided on not only our intent, but our level of engagement with a customer.
Right, but Peter, this starts at the top. It's the utter lack of clarity and ambiguity that starts at the top. Ambiguity at the top results in politics and division at the bottom. And where leadership is vague or ambiguous about the job to be done, and let's be honest, in most tech companies, the job to be done is feeding the valuation target in order that the private equity can raise the next fund. It's got sod all to do with the customer or growing a great business. They become a financial instrument. But if you understand what the customer's job to be done is, then you can start to work within the weird peccadillos and peculiarities of those organizations. Because the weird behavior, the insanity, becomes clear when you understand the job to be done. And then you apply theory of constraint. When you understand that those constraints are there and you have no control over them, and you can accept that as a catalyst for being creative, instead of whining and moaning and playing the victim. Oh, it's the economy. So what? Everyone else is fighting the same problem. Okay, it's the market, it's the competition, it's our management, it's our pricing. No, it's not. It's the noise between your ears, and it's the compromises that you are willing to make in order to sacrifice your values in order to make short-term goals, because you're not doing the basics. The basics are know who your damn customer is, really. And instead, what do? We blanket everybody who's got a pulse and in the tan. Then we hit them with marketing at different stages. I mean, how many times have you seen companies marketing new products and offerings to existing customers, and when the customer phones up and say, hang on a second, I've been a loyal customer for 11 years and you're giving these assholes 50% off and you've given me nothing, are you serious? And then they get shirty about it because of lack of continuity and alignment. We have to bring all these people together around the customer and the customer's job to be done. We've got to work within the constraints and we've got to plan and reflect. And this is something that just isn't happening. When was it? I mean, I dared the listeners to write in and share with me their last week's journal based on the reflections that they have committed to for at least 45 minutes in the last 7 days, where it was them, one big, nasty, difficult question, and a legal pad and a pen and no interruptions. I'd be stunned if more than a handful of people could say that they did something even similar.
And that's Marcus at laughslast.com, laughs-last.com, traditional spelling of all 3 words. I don't think your box will fill up.
No, I don't think so. Well, put it this way. One of my clients, Teddy Peck, ran an advert, and the offer was basically cold call me, I'm hiring. And he gave the names of about a dozen people, including the person who is leaving the job to be promoted, other people on his team, people he'd worked with at his last company. so that they could do the research. Have a guess at how many calls he got. Entirely related to growth. 2. One of whom was someone I recommended, but he did his research and he got the job. And he's knocking it out of the park. Teddy did not have to field 400 CVs. Teddy did not have to field loads of crappy interviews with useless, venal candidates who are just there marching time. He found someone who did the research and proved that he could do the job before he ever showed up. He acted with initiative, and I think we need to adopt this kind of approach with our selling, with our management, with our marketing. We've got to encourage people to get a bit more creative and start thinking as the customer. That's been completely forgotten. The golden days of Madison Avenue in the 50s, they had psychologists on staff. We used to think about the way people behave. Salespeople don't do any thinking today. They go through the motions of dialing 300 poor suckers a day, or an hour, or a minute, or whatever their power dialer does, in the hope that they get through so that they can interrupt someone with something irrelevant and out of time. And AI, I love this stuff, but by God, it's multiplied idiocy and amplified it to deafening proportions.
Are you so this is not a form of being intelligently lazy?
It can be if you ask it intelligent questions, but if all you're doing is the stuff that got us into trouble in the first place, and then you're multiplying that with the power of AI, geez, I mean, think about it. The intelligently lazy is using the AI to really deeply understand your customer and be able to use that to pull real-time data and analyze their language patterns, their sentiment over time, look at trends in the market, being able to do comparative analysis and be able to do that in 45 minutes instead of over weeks with 40 people and math PhDs. But instead, what people do is they just show up and they wing it, and then they wonder why their pipeline is fat, full of rubbish, and why deals don't move.
The leads are trash. Glengarry Glen Ross, the leads are trash. They are garbage.
Well, they probably are, but they're no different from the good leads. It's how you respond to them and whether or not you're turning up at a timely, relevant, appropriate juncture in the buyer's life. Your job is to map the buyer's journey and to turn up at the right time. It's not to just throw mud at the wall and inflict your crap marketing on them and then wonder why they block you. There is a reason why there is an entire industry built around spam blocking. It's because your rubbish stinks. Stop inflicting it on customers and use your brain. So back to the referral question. How do we get referred hot by people who are known and trusted by the people who we need to sell to, who don't pick up the phone and don't respond to email and don't go on LinkedIn? Well, you're going to have to do that through their network, through their trusted networks. And that requires you to use intelligence, to slow down, to stop volume marketing and inflicting this stuff on people. You can't personalize at scale. But what you can do with the technology is you can hyper-personalize with a handful of really well-refined prospects, and you work them over time.
You brought up a word that always makes me cringe. It's in my top 5 bad questions for management. Does it scale? And being intelligent about learning about your customer and targeting them always sounds like it doesn't scale. When in fact you're collecting notes and understanding your, let's throw another acronym out there that's becoming popular, ICP. And the argument, so salespeople out there, marketers out there, think about these 3,000 some odd dials. How much time does that take to get a connect versus that same amount of time being sent
Chances are they will get 2 minutes per day with those 3,000 dials.
at the actual person they would like to speak to, or at a gate?
Yeah, on average, according to Connect and Sales data, which is 120 million cold calls a year, so it's a good statistical base, the average SDR spends 2 minutes a day speaking to someone who is on their list. Now, you're paying these people $40,000 to $80,000 a year in order for them to interrupt people. And the big question is, why do we have SDRs? Because I have a real bugbear about this. We're putting the most junior, most inexperienced people in the hardest possible role, and then we're asking them to speak to the gnarliest, most experienced, most difficult to reach people in the organization. And then when they don't, or when they blow it, and they have to have 3,000 dials to get one conversation going, we blame them. I think we should be looking in the mirror. It starts with the investors, and then the leaders, and then the managers. And we've got to ask the question, well, why do we do it this way? Well, we're doing it this way because we're trying to feed the valuation number. We're trying to feed our revenue target. We're not trying to build a business that is built on trust and loyalty of lifetime customers who bring their wealthy friends and buy everything they possibly can from you at a massive profit, because they understand for you to be sustainable, you have to make good margins. And they don't resent that because they derive way more value by allowing you to be their ally, because I know you don't like the word partnering in this context, okay, to be their ally.
Pitch the book. You here's your window.
No. The book, Making Channel Sales Work, is about partnering, but we've evolved from there. Now we're really focused on ecosystems. It's a great foundation, don't get me wrong. The book that we wrote, Making Channel Sales Work, by myself, Marcus Cauchi, and Dave Davies, my name's been taken off, by the way, because the day after I left, they decided that I was a threat. Very sad and petty. But thanks, Sean. Love you.
Then we will not put a link to the book.
Well, no, you can. I'm in favor of putting a link to the book because it shows that the content is there. The objective was always to put a good book out there that would help people. And I know it works because I know people who've taken triple, double, and taken their business to $1 billion using the system. So it works. I've got nothing to be ashamed of in that book, but things have moved on. What's happened now is that strategic alliances and joint ventures have really started to motor. And what we're starting to see is ecosystems. If you're looking at the level of complexity of the problems and the solutions, the tech stack alone, there's, banks that have somewhere between 600 and 1,000 different applications, most of which have different vendors. Then you've got the levels of complexity for an SME. I mean, I use over 45 different pieces of software. I had no idea how many I'd accumulated over time. Okay, now that's way too much technology hangover. So we've got to reach the point where we have to start asking some sensible questions. And these questions are, where is our customer and what are they trying to accomplish? Who is our customer really? It's not everyone. There is, Price's Law is a really good rule of thumb that I teach all of my clients right from day one. Price's Law states that the square root of the number of people in your organization will generate 50% plus of your output. So if you have 10 salespeople, 3 will produce 50%, 7 the other 50. If you have 100 distributors, 10 will produce 50%, 90 will produce the other 50%. If you have 10,000 partners, 100 will produce 50%, 9,900 will produce the other 50%. So the lesson here is that whining, moaning, and complaining grows exponentially. Talent is very difficult to find and grows in a linear fashion. So our job has to be to pinpoint those top talent. So what are we trying to do there? We're trying to segment our list And then what we're trying to do is work that list over the medium to long term and only work that 4 or 5%. Now, in the short term, we have to look like we're working the other 95%. But in all honesty, you don't, because there's no need. If you spend 80% of your time on those ideal customers and they're in your medium-term pipe, in 6 to 12 months, they all become short-term. And your job is just to keep that bit of the funnel topped up. The way most people do it is they just fixate this quarter, this quarter, this quarter. So they end up pillaging next quarter's pipeline to try and make this quarter's quota. That's a mistake. Never sell. Make it easy for the customer to surrender the order. Have them buy from you. Don't sell to them. And that means you have to choreograph and you have to have enough in the pipeline in the medium term to ensure that you've got a steady stream, because you prospect for choice.
No, I mean, you had gotten into the youngest, most inexperienced people in a sales organization are given the hardest job. And I always laugh and think about, so here in the United States, before you're able to vote, 2 years before you're able to vote, your school lets out in the early afternoon, 3 p.m. You start early, and you can drive, and you can legally work and pay taxes before you're able to vote.
Yeah.
And it's because we use the young to do the work that we don't want to do. Mm. Now, do we not want to do cold prospecting at volume because it doesn't work, or because it's hard, or because of that and more? Why do we punish young people? Why do we give them a distaste for work?
I've got a theory on this. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you look at where most leadership comes from in sales, they come from cold, direct, new business. So everything has to be cold, direct, new business, because my generation needs to die off. So your generation and the generations that follow have a fighting chance of letting go of the crap that we've inflicted on you. Why would you work so hard that, I mean, let me rephrase this. Okay. If I can close 64 times more frequently, and on average, I can get my full fee with no negotiation and no competition, or I can sweat blood to make $3,000 in the hope that I might have a lottery chance of getting someone into a meeting, and maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 20 of those converts. 1 in 20 being closer. Why would I inflict that on my people unless I was either myopic, sociopathic, or ignorant? Because you cannot possibly be any other reason.
It's like I joke with you quite often. Now, here she is. Now spray the perfume in its eyes, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah, exactly. I had a client I coach, and she is magnificent. She is one of the best sellers you will ever have the privilege of having your money taken from you by. It's a pleasure to buy from her. And she was burning out. She's right at the top of her game, and she speaks to her boss, and her boss says, well, it's a rite of passage. You've just got to go through it. No, you don't, you bloody moron. You have a chance to actually fix this and turn this into something that it doesn't have to burn people out and cause them to want to leave the profession or feel so scared that they have to feel that they need to compromise their values and take advantage of a buyer and missell. Do you know Bernie Madoff started with one little lie? That was it. There is no room for compromise. Do not lie. Do not coerce. Do not put your buyers under pressure. Do not exaggerate. Don't sell to people you shouldn't sell to. Recommend your competition if they are better suited to serve that customer's requirement. Do your research. Focus on your medium-term pipeline and focus on service, That's the job. It's not going to the bank. I used to think it's going to the bank. Going to the bank is a symptom of doing your job right.
Going to the bank is a quarterly need, though.
Yes. But if you do the other stuff right, it happens anyway. When you do it the traditional way, you're affected. Think about this, Pete, and have a think about this. The jolt effect, the research from that. 60% of deals that are started end up in no decision. Okay? Now, half of those, in fact, 52% of those, which means 31% of all opportunities generated by your marketing and sales activity have been wasted and lost because the seller didn't read the room. What they did instead was they ratcheted up the pain, or they painted the picture of the better future instead of shutting the fuck up and listening and working out what was really causing them to hesitate. Because at that point, uncertainty had crept in. And the moment uncertainty creeps into a buyer's brain, the neuroscience, which Medic and Challenger and all of those other bits of technology, those sales methodologies, they were developed before the neuroscience came along and told us exactly what was going on. Challenger probably not so much, but your Sandlers and your Richardsons and your Fox and Hounds and Xerox and all of your IBM training and Mercury Orval and all of those are based on 20th century understanding, which is an understanding of how the brain actually works. You know what actually happens in the brains of human beings when you put them under pressure is it switches off the clever bit, the prefrontal cortex, which is where language, reason, and logic reside. Yeah. And then we put these people in front of our other allegedly most important asset, our customers, and we put them into the situation where we tell them, put them under pressure, try and get that deal in, come what may. Now, what that does in the brain of the buyer is it triggers a part of the brain called the insula accumbens, which is where contempt and disgust reside. We are, through our process, deliberately, though unintentionally, causing our salespeople to switch off their clever bits and go in front of the customers, put them under pressure, and turn on contempt and disgust.
We powerhouse whether or not they're up to our standards. We're powerhousing. Am I talking to the right person? How quickly are they going to make a decision? Can they afford it? Can you blame somebody for that?
No, it's not the buyer's fault, and
it's like maitre d' not seating you because of what shoes you have on.
Right, but the problem is the way the CRM is set up. I mean, CRM, in theory, should be there to help salespeople sell more easily, more often for more money, with more certainty. Instead, it's set up as an audit function in order to give finance the illusion of control and management the illusion of control. Salespeople have got no control over the sale. Look at the inaccuracy of your forecast. If it's any more than 2 to 5% out either way, you have to go and look at your process because there's no reason for it to be more than 5% variance.
But oh no, now you just introduced the sales management loves to fall into that. Let's introduce a new framework. Let's teach a new methodology. And then everybody, then regular management is like, oh, everybody seems burned out. Nobody's hitting their numbers. Everybody seems very frustrated.
It's got nothing to do with the methodology, nothing to do with the framework. It's got everything to do with your intent and how you show up. Are you there to help and to serve, or are you there to try and go through the motions of a BANT questioning framework so that you can go and put it into your CRM badly, because frankly, you hate doing the admin, and fill the CRM full of shit so that you can then follow up because you didn't do a proper job the last 17 times you irritated and interrupted? How dare you? You need to look in the mirror and you need to ask yourself, if I was the buyer on the receiving end of one of my phone calls or my emails or my visits, why would I keep me in the room longer than 30 seconds without a boot on my arse and being told, never darken my threshold again. Because they don't want your bad coffee or your bad breath. They're not interested in your features or functions. They don't give a flying monkey's buttocks about your investors or your new products that are going to come down the pipe in 2 years' time. What they care about is, can you keep an old lady warm? Okay, can you solve my problem? Do you actually have my back? Can I trust you? Or are you a self-serving, narcissistic prick, which is what most salespeople are when they turn up, and they don't do it out of badness, they do it out of bad conditioning. They've got idiots in charge. Enough is enough. You know it's wrong. If you cringe when you look in the mirror because you know you're going to have to do things that make your flesh crawl. Stop it. Say no. Get a decent job. Phone me up and I'll help you find a decent boss. I've developed a whole program for principal sellers on how to headhunt your next boss so that they fit. There's a cultural fit. They're going to help you grow and develop. You deserve better than the shit that you're accepting at the moment. Enough.
Okay, well, I've got one more question, and yes, let's get into the pitch. The clerical, the administrative, that all of us salespeople, that everybody says salespeople hate doing, and that salespeople don't do correctly. Do you think it's because we're doing at scale, documenting how much we're distrusted and how much we're hated, and it's being put into a CRM where people that don't know how to read the room or pick up on anecdotal are using anecdotal evidence as analytical data to then judge someone or cite a forecast against a starving need? Like, do we hate paperwork because we have to do too much of it and it doesn't make sense?
Well, I think we end up doing paperwork and we end up doing administration because of the bad decisions that happen beforehand.
So CYA?
Yeah, well, partly, but no, it's even more stupid than that, Peter. Look at the technology hangover that people are suffering from. Real businesses less so, but certainly within tech. I've come across many organizations where they lose 2 to 2.5 hours per day per rep just trying to navigate their tech stack. Now, if you then add on to that the fact that they may be speaking to a customer 1 or 2 minutes a day for 3, I think the Connect and Sell data from 2019 was the average SDR speaks to customers for 3 minutes a day who are on the list and are the people that you want to speak to. Now, that is soul destroying. It's a waste of everybody's time. It doesn't serve the customer. It's just, it's blunderbuss marketing. Throw some grape shot in and hope some of the nails, strike a target. Well, I think there's a better way. And the better way is, well, what if we didn't create this massive follow-up workload for sales and they were able to spend their time on a handful of hyper-suitable, really ideal customers who we would love to have as a customer in 2 or 3 years' time. We spend 2 or 3 years working that account, working deep and wide, understanding what it is they're trying to accomplish, networking, getting referred, understanding their changing landscape, their competitive landscape, the threats and weaknesses that they face, the opportunities around the corner, and then bringing them together, bringing them solutions, bringing them partners, so that when they are ready to buy, you've already brought them consistent value. You've already been timely. You've been referred because you're somebody who always shows up and brings value. That's different. Now, the reality is you've got to weather that first 6 months, maybe 9. And I get it. So have some of your team focused on the short term, keeping your investors happy while you turn the ship. It doesn't generally take longer than 7 to 9 months to do. And if you do, then you get paid compound interest instead of paying it. If you're selling cold and you're not generating hot introductions and referrals, you are paying compound interest. If you are selling hot and you are generating referrals systematically, and you're maximizing your wallet share within the account on the basis of allying with the customer and knowing where they are headed so that you can always meet them where they're going to be instead of where you wish they were, you have a steady pipeline of highly probable opportunities with customers who already know, like, and trust you. You're already on their payment system, and you will have to do next to no negotiating, which means you keep your margins up. That frees up a lot of time. Keep asking yourself, is there a better way? Inevitably, there is.
So this is where I'm going to get into my referral. Friends who are listening, you got all this from Marcus for free. Imagine if you were using a paid service from Marcus. What does that look like? Do you have a paid service? What's going on? What do you do for salespeople?
I do have a paid service. It's a program called Successful Selling, and it's a learning and coaching program. The onus is on the learner. You train dogs, people learn. And so we put the onus on the learner to spend time in difficult, contextually relevant, critical thought that's focused on the customer and their outcomes. And we bring them into a really tough, challenging environment where their ideas are challenged, where people disagree with them. And we work out how to apply their ideas in practice. And then they practice in front of real life customers. The problem with training is that customers and users are never involved in the development. Well, I flip that. Users and customers are the people who design the learning. Everything is based around context. We teach no technique. You've already learned the Sandlers and the Richardsons and gap selling and everything else. You don't need more technique. What you need is stuff that works in this context. That's what we teach. So we teach the stuff that's in the gaps. It's how do you work out what another human being is driven and motivated by, and how do you align what you're doing with that so you build a bridge. The problem is that most salespeople are trying to sell into the differences. The reality is, much like politics, if we found what we have in common, it's 97%. It's only that 3%. And this is where the real skill comes, because true win-win is both sides get their needs met eventually, and neither side has to compromise. That's difficult. That's what we teach. So what you learn with me is to learn how to ask amazingly powerful questions. So if you want 15 minutes with me, I guarantee this, I will ask you the one question that will help you unlock the next stage in your career. If you're stuck, if you're finding that what used to work doesn't, Peter will give you a link and just click on that. 15 minutes. You've got nothing to lose but 15 minutes. But I guarantee at the end of it, a really powerful question that will unlock your thinking. And you have a choice at that point. Either we decide that we're going to work together, and that's a 45-minute coaching session where we design a plan for your career and your life that answers this one question. What do you want your career in sales to give you in life, and how will you achieve it? Now, if that's something that appeals, then get in touch.
And I like that. Marcus, one of the things that always gives me hope when speaking with you is that there are people like yourself in the space that can help with people creating their own journey, but then also developing the soft skills that aren't taught in the frameworks.
There are 4 fundamental skills that every salesperson needs to lead, and they are, if taught at all, they're taught badly. The first one is listening. And most people are taught active listening, and it becomes a technique where you're mirroring or matching overtly. And I think active listening is the death of deep listening. I recommend that we focus on deep forensic listening, where what we're doing is we're transferring the emotion and the intent from the buyer to us and back. The second is really powerful questioning. Now, one of the worst bits of advice I was ever given was don't ask closed questions. What a pile of steaming horseshit that is. Closed questions are fantastic. They're directional, they're binary. They help people make decisions. But the problem is most people don't know how to handle a no. They're afraid of a no. I want no's. I invite them, I welcome them, because that's when the real selling can begin. And also, if it's a qualified no, then both of us can move on with our lives without any further ado. Now, answering questions. Answering questions. You are never going to be asked an original question. I mean, I've been in sales now 35, 40 years, and I've never once been asked an original question after the first 6 meetings. I've heard them all. By 30, there is nothing, no objection, no request for information. So these things can be practiced and rehearsed and honed specifically for the individual. Okay? And then planning an organization. We don't hire for planning an organization. I think we hire for the wrong things. What passes for good or great in sales is wrong. I think the best salespeople are slightly on the spectrum. They have a huge tolerance for boredom. They are great planners and organizers. They're choreographers. They are very good at project management. They're amazing listeners. They are able to connect the dots and help the customer see over the chasm of chaos between where they are and that better future. Because all they can see in the chasm are the components. They can't see the connections. And our job as sellers is to help them see into that fog and make sense of the path across it to that better future. You can't do that if you're not listening and if you're trying to pitch a product.
I do like that you brought up the spectrum a little bit, because I've found that sales is a wonderful career category for neurodivergent people like myself. And it's funny because there's always this antisocial or introverted rumor about people that may be neurodiverse. And I always joke that I'm an extrovert that shipped with an introvert's charging cable.
Well, I think introverts make great salespeople.
Because they can deep listen?
Exactly. Sorry, I couldn't resist the joke, but yes.
Oh. We're gonna have to use the video. I'm sad you didn't use your virtual background.
I was trying to give an air of civilization. Yeah, we've got to just stop and think for a change. You know, Keith Cunningham, in his truly magnificent book, The Road Less Stupid, it's a book I dearly wish I'd had the savvy to write. At the end of every chapter, there's a series of really difficult searching questions. And his recommendation that I recommend to everybody is you, a legal pad and a pen, and one big, hairy-ass monster question and no interruptions. And you have to write to answer that question for 45 minutes. And no pen, no phones, no computers, just you and a pad. And what's fascinating is you'll probably, the first 2 pages, come out with drivel. But then the good stuff will come in. It's the questions that you want. It's not the answers. It's the questioning. When I'm hiring, for example, I don't hire for previous experience. I hire for people who are going to face this, who have faced similar situations, the ones they're going to face. So a returning mum from coming back to work, being able to herd cats and deal with a bunch of overblown egos would probably make a fantastic sales coordinator. Doesn't have to have been a sales coordinator before, but knows how to deal with bullshit and knows when she's being lied to. How cool is that? That's so much more useful than trying to find someone on a word search document and on a CV. We're asking all the wrong questions. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to get smarter with our questions. You want better answers, ask better questions. And my clients get to ask some amazingly good questions because we ask the basics, the stuff that you're glossing over because you create complexity. In the attempt to scale and turn everything into a system that idiots can follow, you've created massive complexity and a hangover because you've created friction for your people, friction for your customers. all in the relentless pursuit of short-term targets, which are going to backfire. Don't do it.
All right. So if you're a salesperson or an aspiring salesperson or an XDR trying to break out of the torture gauntlet, just go to marcus.pitchslap.org. We'll have a redirect to Marcus's inquiry landing page.
And we have also, just for that, to make the point, we also work with managers and leaders because your pains and your suffering is slightly different. And we also have a women-only program because the crap that women have to deal with needs to be dealt with separately in a safe space. So my wife and I put that program together specifically to help aspiring, principled female sellers break through the glass ceiling.
That's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful to hear. And on that management side, training away from hiring based on perceived competency.
That's another 3 hours without pause for breath. So I'm not going to go down there yet.
All right, we'll revisit this in a month or two. I really appreciate you, buddy, and I hope that everyone listening got the same value out of a regular conversation with Marcus as I always do.
Thank you.